I'm Patrick Daly and I'm one of the team at the Rural Doctors Association of Australia. Over the years I've been lucky enough to spend time speaking with various recipients of RDAA's annual awards, and today's podcast features one such person, Jemma Abraham, RDAA's Medical Student of the Year for 2024. Jemma's a final year medical student from the University of Melbourne who's worked hard to promote rural medical careers to her peers, particularly the 1,400-strong medical student cohort at her university. With a father who worked as a bush nurse and a childhood spent in numerous rural locations, it was nearly inevitable that Jemma would embark on a career in rural health, but there was a detour along the way. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet on across Australia as we listen to this podcast. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander listeners who may be joining us. Jemma, congratulations on receiving the RDAA Medical Student of the Year Award for 2024. Was becoming a doctor always on your radar, or were there other career options you may have taken?
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for having me. Well, I think I had a few different maybe career paths. I've had a little bit of a interesting, start to my medical journey. So I'll try and be brief.
That's all right.
But I kind of started, thinking about a career in healthcare in year 11 and 12. And I went to the careers office and I said, hey, I might want to do healthcare of some kind. And they said, hey, you missed the UMAT cutoff, so you can't do that. And you don't have good grades, so you're not going to do healthcare in any way. And I was like, okay, well, that rules that out. Let's start again.
Right.
So I ended up doing a business degree. So I did try something else, a different career. And it wasn't very stimulating or challenging. So I tried something else. And I left that, moved overseas for a little bit, and then knew I wanted to come back to uni and tried. I kind of thought, I'll try and get into business or journalism marketing or biomedical sciences and see what happens. And I kind of knew I would love to do medicine, but had this thing of maybe I won't get in. And so I just threw my hat in the ring, and somehow they accepted me. And then I did the same thing with medicine and they accepted me again. And somehow we're here, and it's been a journey, but it's been fun. So I suppose you could say there were a few other career paths that I may have taken, but this is the one I've ended up on. So here we are.
It sounds good. What were the initial attractors for you in choosing rural medicine, do you think? Was there an early experience you had with a rural doctor? Because you're from a rural area, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I grew up moving all over rural Victoria. So Dad was a bush nurse, so he moved around a lot. People used to say, oh, you move around a lot, you must be military kid. And I was like, no, rural health.
So he was a bush nurse, you said?
He was, yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
So we moved around a lot. I'm from East Gippsland, Bensdale Way, and then moved around. We moved to Woomalang for a bit, up in the Mallee, and then to Omeo, the Ranges. And then I did high school in Bendigo. So, yeah. And I suppose what attracted me to rural medicine, I think the people. I am definitely a people person, and I always loved growing up in those small, tight-knit communities where you kind of have to be involved to be, to survive and to thrive. I really loved that sense of community, and I really knew I wanted to kind of stay in a rural or regional area. So that was kind of the number one thing that attracted me. And then I think when I thought about, going through medicine and what I enjoyed about, the prospects of a career in medicine, I kind of didn't really ever see myself in a metro hospital. I think it's too much hustle and bustle for me, but also I felt like I lost that community feel. And so I think those things combined kind of, just brought me back to that rural regional medicine kind of career or goal for career in that.
And certainly having your dad as a bush nurse, you would have experienced a lot in terms of the career that he had and the benefits of working as a health professional, both personally and also to your community.
Yeah, exactly. So it was always something that was, I saw quite prominently and was very aware of. And I think definitely may have had a part in getting me to where I am today.
Just out of interest, do you think there's enough education for high school careers advisors on what to do when people turn up and say they're keen on a career in health?
Absolutely not. Yeah, I think from my experience, I'm very um, keen to tell people when they're like, oh, how did you manage to get into medicine? I'm like, well, let me sit you down and tell you.
Yes,
And, and when people are in year 12, when they're trying to pick what subjects they're going to do, I'm like, don't worry about it. It won't matter in 4 years' time because you can do whatever you want to do. You just need your ATAR not to count, or is it ATAR now? Yeah, ATAR score not to count.
absolutely.
And
Yes.
yeah, yeah, so I think there's definitely not enough, I guess, yeah, education for careers advisors in that sense.
Because it certainly is a theme that we hear. I think I heard from our medical student of the year last year a similar sort of
Mm,
experience. So it's certainly a bit of a ongoing theme, I guess.
yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think anyone can do anything they want to do, and I'm very passionate about that. So, um, yeah, hopefully, if anyone takes anything away, they take that away, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as it happens, you've been able to complete all of your medical student studies in a regional location. In your
Mhm.
case, at the University of Melbourne's Rural Clinical School at Ballarat. Um, how easy was it to be able to train rurally in your experience, and what have been the challenges, and also what's made the difference?
Yeah, I guess when I first applied for medicine, they kind of said, would you like to be a part of the rural clinical school, or do you want to do the generalized, I guess, Commonwealth supported place, or do you want to go metro? Um, and for me, I preference rural. So I think it wasn't necessarily a difficult decision for all the aforementioned reasons. Um, but I yeah, I think I'm definitely someone who, like I said, I'm passionate about everyone being able to do anything they want to do, and I definitely wanted to give medicine a crack. And um, I think going rural, I don't think it's been difficult training rurally. I think if anything, it's been a benefit. Um, I remember in going to my first medical student conference that our university runs, and I was chatting to someone else who was attending at the same, I guess, workshop that I was. And in comparison, within 6 months of kind of starting our clinical placement, she'd done one cannula or one IV cannula, and I had done like three the day before. And
Yes.
I was very confused about how they possibly had only one opportunity to do that. And I think um, that was kind of a moment where I was like, oh, okay, I actually don't have any concerns about the opportunities that I'm getting. I'm getting everything I need. And um, yeah, I suppose challenges, maybe I think it would be challenging for people who aren't rural and who haven't had that experience of being away from family or having to drive longer distances. I personally am very used to that. I don't think that was a challenge for me, but I can definitely see how it could be. I think challenge to a degree would be that I think imposter syndrome is one of those things that a lot of medical students and people in medical professions definitely have to deal with. Um, but I would say for rural medical students, it's definitely prevalent. And I think that comes down to there being this, idea that you don't have to get as good of a score on the GAMSAT, or don't have to work as hard, or you're getting a subpar education because you're out rural, you're not at a metro hospital with all the fancy schmancy things. And
Yes.
um, of course, you and I, and probably everyone else who's listening, and hopefully those who don't know already, it's absolute nonsense.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I think that definitely can take a toll. And that's definitely been something that I think can be challenging when you're faced with someone who's, kind of doing a subtle behavior change once you've said that you're rural.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, but I think um, in terms of things that kind of have made the difference and made rural training worth it, I think I think, like I said, I'm a people person from the get go. And the community that I think that we've built within our medical degree has been incredible. A lot of the people that I've done medical training with, I've been with for the last 4 years. So we've lived together. We've, I guess, yeah, lived, worked, studied. We've really dragged each other through the mud out to the other side. And I think that makes all the difference when you've got the supportive people around you. And obviously coupled with, the family and friends and the good support networks outside of that, and having a good work-life balance, which I think is one of the other benefits of being rural, is that you get to actually have a life outside of medicine, whether that's, medical school or as a doctor and in training. So yeah.
Do you think that perception of rural medical training being second rate is changing for the next generation of medical students who are coming through?
I think it's starting to. I think there's definitely been a little bit of shift. And I think, at the end of the day, I personally believe that we will make better doctors, for the fact that, we are good with people and we are about the community. And I think at the end of the day, we're treating a person, not a patient. And I think sometimes that can get lost when you have a person who's going in and out and in and out, and you don't necessarily get to make that connection with that person. So I think it's starting to be recognised as a bit more of an option, I suppose, at all. And that's something I've personally been really passionate about, kind of trying to promote. I know this year we had one of the students who's been based in Melbourne for their final year actually came out to one of our rural clinical sites, and has absolutely loved it, and has felt more at home, in Wangaratta than I think anywhere else, and has absolutely loved it. So, yeah, I think people just need the experience to actually know that it's possible.
And then they're often converts.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, there's always a few.
Absolutely. What needs to change to make things easier for more rural students to get into medicine, do you think? And also to get more medical students from either the bush or the city interested in rural medicine?
Um, Look, this might be a little bit of a controversial answer. I personally think that people actually need the experience, and I think we probably need to encourage more compulsory placements. I think for rural placements, and for students to actually go out and have that experience. And I don't mean a 2-week GP placement. I mean a couple of months. And um, I think as soon as people get the opportunity to actually experience what it's like and be engaged and involved in those extracurricular activities that make going rural so much more fun, I think that will get people on board. I think as well, I think one of the issues is that people don't realize they can do their training in rural areas. So I think it's, you can do medical school, and then you become a doctor and you do internship wherever, and it's the same wherever. But then after that, people feel like they have to go back to Metro to get that college training or college-led training. And I think it's really not, I guess, sold, or people aren't really told about the fact that they can actually do a lot of their college training, or at least part of it, in a rural or regional area. And I think that's something that probably needs to change as well, is a bit more awareness about what is possible and how flexible some programs can actually be when you actually ask. Yeah, that's probably my two main things I think that need to change.
Well, speaking of promotion of rural medicine and rural medical training, you've been very active, evangelistic, you might say, in promoting rural medicine to the entire medical cohort at the University of Melbourne. It's included showcasing rural medicine at the university's annual medical students conference, running workshops on everything from snake bites, suturing, IV cannulation, to birthing in a hospital with no obstetric service. And given the conference is attended by around 1,400 medical students each year, it's actually an ideal target market and no small feat. You've also successfully lobbied the Melbourne Medical School to include rural health as part of the ongoing conference curriculum, with 4 academic sessions and 2 workshops every year, now dedicated to rural health. So tell me about these achievements and why you've considered this to be so important.
Yeah, thank you. I think you that makes me sound very busy.
It does.
I think,
Probably not just
yeah,
sound busy, I don't think.
no, maybe not so much. It's been a very chaotic couple of years, I will say
I can
that.
imagine.
Yeah, look, I suppose I will just say, I'll start off by prefacing by saying, I have definitely been a been a part of it, and I've proud to have worked very hard on these things, but there's definitely been other people that have chipped in along the way. So it has definitely been a team effort.
No I in
And
team.
yeah, exactly right. So yeah, I think these achievements are really massive. I think it was initially something that was kind of mentioned briefly that there was no rural health, I guess, promotion or any kind of mention of rural healthcare at this conference a few years ago, and hadn't been for many years. And it was something that we kind of noticed, but weren't really sure what to do about it. And look, I'm definitely someone who, as soon as I get told it can't be done, I think it spurs me in the opposite direction, and I say, well, you know, watch me. So I think that definitely had a little bit to do with it, if I'm honest. And we kind of went to Melbourne Medical School and to the subject coordinator for the conference, and said, why is this not happening? And they said, well, if you want to make it happen, you need to make it happen. And I was like, okay, well, what? I will do that. Let me go.
Yes.
So then they weren't so keen on that first year it being included. So I had to kind of do a year of work to prove why it was so important. And then the following year was able to actually get it successfully ingrained in the curriculum, which was really exciting. And that was, our Outlook Rural Health Club, our Rural Health Club for University of Melbourne, worked really hard to kind of, I guess, back that endeavour. And we've been really lucky. We work with a lot of rural health organisations, such as ACRM and RDA, or RDAV and RDAA, and RWAVE and all sorts, VRGP, to kind of really bring rural health to the forefront. And we've been really successful in doing that. And I think it's just so important to make sure that not just rural health kids are hearing about rural health options, because it just limits us so much. Whereas, it means that we have such a broader, I guess, scope, and a broader amount of students who actually might just, they might just hear something about from a rural health practitioner, or, they might just see something that sparks their interest, and they might just get that little, tingle, thinking, maybe I could try that, maybe that could be me. And that's all we need, is we just need to spark a couple of them, and then we'll get them all there. So I think that's why it's been so important. Yes, go for it. Sorry.
Do you think there have been some converts from having those rural health and rural medical subjects included in the conference from urban medical students who otherwise wouldn't have considered rural?
Yeah, I think so. And I think even my colleague that I mentioned before, who came out for his final year, is, a really great example of that. Someone who had never, ever thought of doing rural medicine in any way, shape, or form, is from Melbourne, from a metro place, would never about leaving their family or friends, and has moved out for a year just to give it a go. And I think, I think it's kind of worth it just to see a few of those kind of pop up, and yeah, like we said before, we just need a couple to start trickling in, and learning that there's more opportunities, and there's opportunity for growth as well, and leadership, and to progress your career in rural areas. It's not just, I have to be in the biggest metropolitan city and centre that I can find. And I think there definitely has been a little bit of a shift, and I think it will continue to shift over time.
You've also worked closely with clinicians and regional training hubs to deliver a rural career camp for penultimate and final year medical students to promote internship and training pathways available in rural health services in Victoria. Tell me a little bit about this initiative and how successful it's been in encouraging particularly urban-based students in particular to consider a rural medical career.
Yeah, I think it's something that was previously kind of run as an annual thing, and it was more focused on, I guess, prepping people for. It was more about, I suppose, telling people about becoming a rural generalist, and it was more about, I guess, just being a rural health practitioner in general. Whereas I think this year, one of the things that we really changed, and I kind of put my hand up and said I'd love to be involved, and basically said, I think people don't care so much about this. We get a lecture about this every couple of months, particularly as a rural student. We know all about rural journalism. We know what it is and where we're going and what we're doing.
Yes.
But I think the big thing with this particular, I guess, rural health career camp was about showcasing how internship could be different in different areas, and how your internship year is going to be great no matter where you are, as long as you put into it what you want to get out of it. And same with training pathways. We really wanted to highlight those training pathways and make it clear that people could stay in rural or regional Victoria and they didn't have to move. And I think another really big thing that's probably not mentioned about rural Victoria, or rural Australia, I should say, um, and particularly for medical students, is that I think when you're in a place that you love, and most rural students love where they are, um, you tend to settle. And I think you want to settle down, you want to create a life somewhere, and I think that's the thing that we want to promote. We want people to settle down, whereas if people think they have to go to Melbourne to do internship, they meet someone, they end up settling down there, and they never want to come back out because their partner doesn't want to move. So I think it's about giving people the opportunity to be able to settle rurally as well, and taking into consideration not just the training pathway or the job itself, but also taking into consideration the lifestyle and how, how that impacts that person as a whole. So, yeah, being able to actually show people what's available in those regions that isn't just, hey, this is the training pathway, but also here's this really great winery, or here's this really great sports team that we have a social club for, or here's this, I think, art class or whatever it may be that people are interested in. I think it's about getting people involved in the local community, and that will kind of, I think community sells every time, in my opinion anyway.
And in terms of the training pathways, because that's obviously an important aspect of keeping junior doctors in the bush,
Yeah.
attracting them there, what more do you think needs to be done in terms of making or embedding training pathways in rural and regional areas to prevent that sort of migration back to the cities?
Yeah, I think there's this common thing that people think if you throw money at it, it'll fix it. And I don't necessarily believe that that's true. Um, I think, like I said, I think it just comes back to people being able to properly take into consideration their life and how it will impact that. I know, for example, for me, I'm thinking about, a few different training pathways, but I'm also considering whether or not I have to move every 6 months for this pathway, versus if I can stay in the one place, but will that give me enough experience? And, I think people want to actually know, and students and junior doctors want to know how it's going to impact their life long term. Um, and I think, throwing money at it or giving a student a grant, or a junior doctor a grant, is all well and good, but I don't think that's the problem solver at the end of the day. Um, yeah, I think other than that, I feel like training pathways, they just need to be more available. And I know that's tricky with supervisors, and making sure that people get the same amount of training and whatnot throughout all of those different levels of, I guess, as you progress to a senior doctor. But I do feel like there needs to be more opportunities, and I think that's something that, yes, there's still a lot of room for growth in that area.
Are there other avenues to make it easier for medical students and junior doctors to envisage a rural medical career and to actually get there?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think in terms of, um, yeah, looking at what a rural medical career might look like, I think, um, obviously I mentioned before rural generalism, and I think that's something that probably isn't as well known about in terms of, um, that metro cohort. It's something we're obviously working on, um, but I think that's a really big area that is kind of undersold in that metropolitan junior doctor medical student population. I think rural students know all about it. They can tell you everything from, the training pathway to who started it to, all of the above. But I don't think it's as commonly known about. And I still think it's kind of one of those things that's relatively new and people haven't really worked out what that could look like for them. So I feel like it is becoming a lot easier for people to actually see those careers. And I think the more we kind of talk about, being a rural gen or even, doing rural training and becoming a rural doctor of any kind, I think it's becoming a lot easier to actually see that for yourself as a medical student or a junior doctor. I do think it's a lot easier when you have mentors and people that you can actually look up to who are doing it. And I think that's, one of the things. I've been very lucky. I've been to a lot of conferences and I've met a lot of people, and places like RMA I think are great avenues for people to meet people in careers they can actually learn about and ask questions and say, hey, you're a GP anaesthetist. What does that look like? What's your split for your week? What do you do on any given day? And I think, talking to different people who are working in different, I guess, a remote versus a rural versus a regional area and what that looks like. I think the best thing you can do is learn from other people's experience at this point in time. And I think it's a lot easier for you to see yourself in their shoes. But I think, yeah, the more we kind of highlight those experiences and those achievements as well, because it is an achievement to be working in those places. And yeah, I guess the more we highlight it, the more people will actually see it and get a bit of a taste for it, I think, as well.
Speaking of mentors, who've been your greatest mentors in your medical journey so far? And obviously, your dad it would be one of them, I suspect.
Yeah, he is for sure. I think I suppose when I think of mentors, I think definitely my family. I think dad's been very inv heavily involved in the rural health space for a long time. So I think that was always something that I was aware of, and it was always something that I kind of, yeah, knew was interesting. And I don't think I've ever really appreciated how much that kind of, spurred me in my decisions later on. Um, I think as well, it's a little bit tricky to narrow down exactly who, because I feel like over the years, um, there's been so many people that I've kind of got tidbits from who I thought, you know what, I absolutely love this person and what they're about. And I just want to be this person. And so I think one person who definitely springs to mind is Dr. Shabna Rajapaksa. She's currently a pediatrician in Ballarat. And we've had a lot to do with her. She's one of also our sub-dean in Ballarat Rural Clinical School as well. But I just love the way she approaches the balance between life and work. And I think, she's definitely also shares that passion for you can do anything as long as you give it a crack and put your mind to it. And I think she's been a really good source of wisdom and knowledge. And I think she's definitely, spurred me on, I think, as a leader and as someone that I can go to and I need support. And I think I've found that, and I know others have found that really, really inspiring. I think, there's so many other people that I think I've met along the way that have just kind of, added their little tidbits that have kind of made my journey all the more exciting and interesting. And I'm just trying to think of, like, should I start reeling people off, or am I just going to be annoying?
You can send me a list later. Send me a list later.
Yeah.
Now, speaking about your medical journey, or the journey ahead, what direction do you see your medical career taking? And what sort of career mix would you like to see eventually?
Yeah, I suppose I haven't really fully worked out exactly what I want to do. At the moment, I'm thinking about pediatrics. Every time I do it, I love it. Um, I'm also considering emergency medicine. I am kind of torn between the two, and then sitting right in the middle is rural generalism, and I'm kind of working out whether or not I love GP enough to do GP and do an advanced skill in either peds or ED.
Or
Or
both?
whether I love or both, or whether I love one or the other enough to do that straight. So I'm kind of in this little this little trio of being pulled each way, but I'll give you an update as soon as I know.
You get back to me.
And yeah, exactly. Maybe that can be in the email too. In terms of a career mix, I definitely know I want to stay rural, or at the very, I guess, close to the city, regional. I think for me, like I said, it just comes back to why I wanted to do it in the first place, which is to support and be a part of that community. And I think ultimately that's important to me, and my lifestyle is definitely more important than my career, in my personal opinion anyway. And I'm sure that will change at different points in my life, but at the moment that's kind of how I feel. And yeah, I think my ideal mix would be, if not living rurally, to be living regionally and commuting to rural areas to kind of provide services as appropriate. You know, a couple of times a week if I can. It'll just be, you know, how that plays out, we'll just wait and see. But that's kind of my current plans. And if I have to go to the city for training, well, then I'll suck it and do it. But I'm not happy about it, and I just want everyone to know that.
That's very upfront. Admirable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you complete your medical studies in a couple of months' time, probably even earlier than that, actually. What's in store for you next year?
Yeah, I've got about four or 5 weeks to go, so I'm nearly there. So next year I have accepted an internship position at Ballarat at the Grampians Health. So that's happening next year. I am actually trying very hard to not take on too much extracurriculars. I think, as we alluded to before, it's been a little bit busy.
Yes.
So I'm trying to just enjoy the ride and settle into internship before I take on too much. But we have got a bit of a running joke going around that I'll be a part of the HMO Society before I blink. So I'm sure it won't be long.
No.
But yeah, so I suppose that's it for me. I'm just kind of cruising at the moment, and looking forward to starting that next journey and seeing what happens next, basically.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's been great talking with you today, Jemma. Thank you very much for your time, and congratulations once again on receiving this year's award.
Well, thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you too. I appreciate your time.
And that was Jemma Abraham, RDAA's Medical Student of the Year for 2024. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and I look forward to having you tune in again. Until next time, happy days.